Hey, weirdo, welcome back. What if being your true, authentic self, even the parts you think you should hide, was your most powerful business asset that you have? My guest today is Marina, and her story is proof that it is. Born in the Soviet Union, she grew up in a culture of censorship before emigrating to Canada at the age of 16. Today, she's on a mission to help leaders find their voice. Marina is a global speaker, a university instructor, and a co founder of Brand of a Leader, a seven-figure personal branding agency that transforms Gen X founders and CEOs into industry defining thought leaders. She is the pioneer of the concept which she calls radical authenticity. And she believes that in 2026, a leader's visibility is no longer optional, it is a critical business asset. Marina, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
My guest today, Marina, how do I say your last name?
Think color beige, Byezhanova.
Byezhanova?
Yes.
Okay. Marina, now I can't even say it. Marina, I'm just going to say your name and leave it at that.
Perfect.
And before we start, we like to ask all our guests one question. What is a truth in your industry that people do not want to admit?
One of the most difficult things for CEOs and entrepreneurs, Gen Xers that we work with to admit is that building their visibility and having a voice is no longer optional. It's really hard for them. They did not grow up with social media, with phones in our hand, and lack of privacy in many cases. So they really struggle with seeing that it's just now an expectation. It's no longer an option.
Very, very fair. And I just discussed this the other day with somebody else. I'm writing a book about how we need to be more focused on digital literacy, and AI is giving us the ability to actually check our realities as well. So that'll be out in a long time. But I do want to get into who you are. Growing up in the Soviet Union, what has that taught you about bringing a voice to leadership?
Well, it was the type of a culture where the less you stood out, the better and safer it was. So really the opposite of how I live my life today. And when you opened up your podcast and you say, hey, weirdo, it was not good to be a weirdo there. You had to be exactly the same as everyone else in every way. Sameness of how we looked and how we behaved and things that we believed in. Also sameness of just our thoughts. There was not only absolutely no diversity culturally or racially, but there was also no diversity of thinking. And what that brought to me now living in Canada and now leading my own business and building my own, dare I say, thought leadership is how important, priceless, and precious, not only the diversity that we talk about usually, and maybe a bit tired of hearing about on the DI side of things, how that is important, but what's really important is diversity of thought. I believe it's the most important form of diversity that exists.
I do have a question on that. With the recent changes in Canadian legislation and laws, I don't know if you're up to date on them. Do you worry that we're going back into that kind of way of being?
The lack of diversity of thinking.
The government clamping down on more thought than anything else.
Yes and no. I think I saw certain glimpses of government overreach and flashbacks of my upbringing when I went through COVID in Canada. Just so easy to manipulate people into submission. And again, that sameness. It was very scary to me. It was was perhaps the scariest or part of my adult life because of that. There will always be, I think, with dependent on the government that's in power, we're always going to go through the waves of censorship and the waves of limitation of certain things and maybe limitation on immigration, which also can impact that push towards sameness. However, we no longer are in the Soviet Union. We're not in North Korea. We have access, not only access to information, but we have platforms to have a voice. So I think that blaming external forces, government included, is a little bit of a cop-out because we all can have a choice, our opinions of being ourselves. That I see is self-censorship that so many people engage in.
Yeah, and that's something I get into as well because I did that for years. One of the reasons I started to speak out was because it felt like I was performing. My online version was not me. It was like a performance that I was putting on, but then I also realized that I was putting a performance on real life. And it was just merging the two that really helped me to figure myself out. You can speak out and have your truth, and it's okay. But at the same time, don't be afraid to live in the controversy. Be afraid to have people having negative opinions of you. Breakthrough that I had was just,
Really hard. It's really
yes.
hard. People can be really vicious. And even on a social media platform like LinkedIn, where it's not anonymous, something like Facebook, that gets really vicious because now people can be anonymous. But even on LinkedIn, the things that I've heard people say to me with their names and their titles and their employers' names has been shocking. But I like that you said that to you, it's that attempt to really be yourself and put yourself out there is a big learning. So not only is it impactful externally, which it is, but it also impactful internally. And I think a lot of people underestimate what that learning journey is like when we are authentic, we take that risk and we put ourselves out there.
I'm definitely social media stupid. I have no clue how to work my socials, but somehow people are reaching me and I don't. But for people who are like that, what do you say to them?
I love that you said that because if you go on any social media platform, and nowadays on LinkedIn is very active, everyone's trying to hack the algorithm. What is the hack? And should I include this? And should I include that? And should I just constant that hacking? And it all just comes down to people resonating with you. It doesn't matter the hack or the best practice. The best practice is figure out who you are and then have the courage of putting yourself out there. Your people will find you. And the numbers don't matter because having a lot of people come to you just because, I don't know, you said something controversial or something that everyone wants to hear right now is not as powerful as a smaller group of people, but people that are either like minded or not like minded at all, but interested in what you have to say in your message, because that is something that's perhaps expanding their horizons of how they are. Figuring out who you truly are before putting yourself out there instead of performing, instead of trying to be the next Gary Vee or someone else who's very active online is the hardest thing to do. Everyone wants to download a playbook. It doesn't work. They say that person is a fake. No, it worked for that person. It just was their authentic self, and yours is perhaps different. So finding that authenticity within, packaging it, having the courage of putting it out there, those are the best practices.
Fair enough. And also, it helped that I come up with an iconic name that I could steal across the board. I want to get more into your agency. What does Brand of a Leader do?
We help Gen X CEOs and founders find their voices and scale the reach of those voices. So we're a personal branding agency, but really rooted in thought leadership. So when people come to us and say, I want to be famous and I want to have 1 million followers, no judgment, not our jam. We work with Gen X founders who would rather not be putting themselves out there. They feel intimidated. They feel that it's just not their thing. They want to be in the shadows. As I said, they're not sure that it's a thing to do. They're on the fence, and we help them define their narrative, understand their authentic self, and then we help them create LinkedIn content. We book them as guests on podcasts. We write thought leadership articles for them so that their visibility positively impacts the visibility of their businesses.
Very fair. And why is it so important in 2026 to have this?
I started this business because to me, this was my contribution to the anti self censorship movement and anti censorship movement. So I started the business from I came from the Soviet Union. I came to Canada. I said, oh my God, I can finally have a voice. I couldn't really, an immigrant, very accented, nobody would understand what I'm saying. And so I kept working on my English and practicing and improving it. Finally became a public speaker and started getting all this visibility. It was great. And then I said, oh, I bet you everyone else is doing this. And then I started speaking with other CEOs and other business owners, and they weren't. And so to me, that was so shocking because they could. Their English was great, and they were successful people that had good things to say 5 years ago when we launched the business. Over the 5 years, the landscape has changed quite a bit. I remember back in the day when social media, there were a lot of business owners and CEOs that were saying it's not for our business because we're B2B, because we're this. There's lots of reasons it's not for, well, now every single business is on social media. And now it's the same for CEOs and founders. We can keep saying it's optional. It's not. The reason that it's not optional, there are several. Number one, it's become a key component of any company's marketing. So when someone is searching a business to engage, the results that they're being fed, whether it's through Google search, and now within Google there's AI search, or within an LLM, the results that are fed, they're rooted in thought leadership. And it's fascinating to see, because if you, for example, Google your name in an LLM, or your business name if you're a leader of a business, and you will see the sources that an LLM uses to quote you, a lot of them are podcasts, which is
Mhm.
fascinating. And so it's just the landscape has changed. So very key function of the marketing function of organization feeds the sales function of the organization as well, because let's be honest, we all look each other up. Before a meeting, we will Google each other and we'll go on each other's LinkedIn, we'll look each other up. What's there? That body of work also either supports your credibility or hinders it. And number three, our team members are expecting it. Our team, I only came to work at your organization, so they saw an ad, but then they Googled me and they looked me up on LinkedIn. And then they said, oh, this person resonates from the standpoint of core values. This person aligns. Mind you, the opposite is true as well. There are people who might see me and say, well, I never want to work for her. That's great. I'd rather we identify that lack of fit early on than 6 months in. So the impact of the organization as well. That's where it's become key. And for any founder and CEO who feels, well, their competitors think differently. And so you're losing that time and momentum to your competition as you remain silent.
It's very fair. And I like the part that you added in there that people are starting to find businesses that they resonate with. I see a very big future in mission driven companies. Being able to really showcase who you are, what you're doing, why you're doing it, those types of, this is why I do this, is I'm trying to showcase all of these fixes, everybody trying to fix little parts of the world, how they're doing it, why they're doing it. And it's amazing what people are doing that people don't know about.
Hugely so. And I'll give you an example. We had one client that came to us. He has a security company in the US, great organization, but not something where people are just lining up to work for that type of a company, service offering. And he really wanted to increase the caliber of the leadership within the organization that reports into him. He is CEO. And that's why we started working on his visibility. So we started creating his LinkedIn content and thought leadership articles, et cetera. And all of a sudden, he noticed that the caliber of applicants that were coming to his organization increased substantially. And he would ask them in the interviews, why, so for example, an executive from Disney applied. He never saw that because Disney is arguably more exciting as a company. And so he would ask, why did you apply? And every single person would say, well, I looked you up after I saw the ad. And based on, because that was the goal of the content, he talked a lot about his core values. He talked a lot about his operating beliefs, about the organization, the culture. And they said, I felt that was a strong fit. I would want to work for a leader like you. Boom, that is priceless. That is so much more powerful, cheaper, and impactful than any campaign that the HR department can run as part of their employer branding efforts.
And just to add on that, it's now global. You're now recruiting globally. It's not just your local area anymore. See the world being more of global conglomerates or small businesses, global small businesses. This is where I've been running a little prediction. I'm trying to figure out if the world's just going to end up with micro businesses all over, or if we're going to end up with mega corporations.
I think it will continue to be both. I think we'll see a lot more successful micro businesses because that has been the trend. That has been the trend before AI. And I remember reading a book about $1% million business, I believe, give or take, that was the title. And it talked about just the whole model of contractors and where you don't need physical spaces, you don't need full-time employees, you don't need all of the payroll stuff. Prior to COVID. During COVID, we became so much more comfortable also with overseas collaborations. The jury's still out as to how much AI can actually do for us independently. I know we're all very excited and creating our agents and playing in co-work and so on. The jury's still out, but I think there's a lot more opportunity for those small businesses. But I think large conglomerates are not going away, and through M&A, they're going to continue to grow, will remain. Same as they're saying, there's a disparity socially that we're experiencing between the rich and the poor, and how that divide is going to continue widening based on the technical aptitudes and access to technology. Perhaps something similar with businesses. But this is my basic research evaluation.
I'm okay with being small and not really profiting right now, but I'm okay being a single founder doing what I'm doing. And AI is the only reason I'm able to do all of this. And in fact, I'm even building micro applications for businesses around me because I live in a small town. So I'm building an invoicing app where you just talk into it and you can invoice your client. These are things that I would not be able to do without AI, but I know I'm on the bleeding edge and not everybody's there yet. I'm pushing it out there because I'm somewhat confident that there's going to be a digital reality eventually, and I want my clone to exist in it somewhere. So,
Mm.
um, but those are overwhelming ideas, and people don't really understand where I'm at because I see AI as something that gives hope and something that's could really push us forward.
But it's
What?
because you are in the learner mode. You enjoy learning and you
Yeah.
enjoy getting to know those technologies. That's why you see it as exciting. People who are very uncomfortable with change and very comfortable with status quo and don't want to be learning, want to be executing and doing their job and they do it really well, of course, they're scared. And it's interesting because similar to you, I'm very immersed in AI right now and learning all the tools and technologies. And then because we're in this bubble and then you communicate with people who are doing the same, it seems that, wow, everyone's doing this. I'm behind. Let's continue. Let's create more. But then if you look at actual statistics, such a small percentage of people that uses it at all, and then even much smaller that uses it beyond just, hey, chat GPT, my foot hurts, what might it be? So beyond that capability. But unknown is really scary to people. And I've learned that as a leader, I've learned that working with people in my organization, some people see change as something exciting, and very many people, even positive change, they perceive it as potentially scary. So
Mm. To me, I see there's going to be a lot more work in the future. That's there's so many physical things that we still can't use AI to fix. We're going to need those gaps until, well, robots are coming in a few years, but they're still not there yet. What are some tips that people can start doing to get themselves familiar with building themselves as a brand?
So, one of the biggest reliefs to people is not calling themselves a brand or thinking in those terms. A lot of people get turned off by the concept itself. We can always reframe it and say, what can people do to build their visibility? Visibility is clear and feels less icky to people. So, how do we build our visibility? What do we do? The first thing to do is to work on your strategy before just going out there and putting yourself out there. What is going to be your unique angle? There has to be something. For me, it's radical authenticity. For you, it's the weird Canadian, but it's that immediate something that helps you stand out. It elicits curiosity. I go, the weird Canadian, huh, that's interesting. You go, ooh, radical authenticity. What does that mean? So defining that angle or point of view becomes key and gives confidence to that you're not just going to be more noise, but you're bringing something interesting to the conversation and you're going to stand out. So that pre-work is really crucial. That's what we help our clients with before we do any execution, is defining what will be your unique angle. What are going to be your messaging points so that you stay within your lane? A lot of people don't want to put themselves out there because they say, I'm a private person. I don't want to be sharing everything. Good news, you don't have to, because you're building your personal brand, your visibility on the back of thought leadership. But you do have to share something about yourself. There has to be a humanizing component. What will it be? You want to define that. You want to think of what are going to be my platforms. You don't need to be the advice of you need to be on all platforms, posting 10 times a day. That's for influencers. That's not for us. So choose your platform, likely LinkedIn because it's business. Or maybe you do want to launch your own podcast. That's a lot of work, but maybe you do. Or maybe you want to guest on podcasts. That's fantastic. Gives you tons of visibility. So that strategy piece, that is the first piece. It's not sit in front of your computer and write a LinkedIn post. It's create that strategy first and execution follows.
Very fair. And that does come with a lot of understanding yourself too. So you have to really look at yourself and figure out what you want to be, who you are.
We really got it. We take our clients through the process time and time again. They say, I thought this would feel like a marketing meeting. And instead, it feels like a meeting with my therapist because the whole process is rooted in us understanding the person to help package. We talk about childhood, we talk about their parents, we look at those through lines throughout their life. That's how I arrived at realizing that to me, authenticity is everything and elevating it to radical authenticity, really being yourself. Yes, you're absolutely right. It's a process in introspection. A lot of people think it's more of a PR. You create an image for yourself, like you said you did at the beginning. It's fake, it's constructed. It's the opposite. That is personal branding done wrong. Personal branding done right is an inside out process. What makes it much harder is that it's inside out and then you're presenting it to the world. As you said, not everyone's going to love it and they'll let you know, but it's truly a process of introspection.
And to those who are fearful of what people don't like, wear it as a badge of honor. If you have hate, hate is better than apathy. If nobody cares about you, nobody's going to come to you. But if people hate you, you've done something to spark their emotions and to get them to view you. Don't see it as negative, see it as positive, and just don't worry about it.
So hard though. It's
I
so
know.
hard. We're all human. One of my core values is censorship is evil. And of course, it serves me in many ways, and I'm very outspoken. And then if people say, "Oh, you're so outspoken, so direct," oh, censorship is evil. However, what that also means to me is if I write a post and you come on my post and you insult me and you tell me I'm the world's biggest loser, I can't delete it.
Mhm.
Because if I delete that comment, then I'm censoring you. And I sit there and it hurts deeply. I don't want to be insulted. And then also, if you say something negative, I'm thinking other people in my network are going to see it. Are they also going to believe? Because sometimes it's a vicious insult. Okay, everybody's going to judge the person, not me. But what if it's just criticism? And it's not vicious, but it's still criticism. And I'm thinking, what if everyone else reads it and believes it? What do I do with this? I can't delete it. I let it sit. It's very painful, but I absolutely agree with you. If nobody hates us, nobody will love us. And then we're going to be in that middle, low impact place. When people do, hate is a big word, but when they do, that means there are lots of people that love us. And good thing is that most people will either support or move on. It's very few people who will stop to say something vicious. They do exist, but they're in the minority.
Yeah. And to just give your point, I sometimes do my podcast in my hoodie. So people are, why am I taking advice from a guy in an hoodie? And I'm, well, why are you judging me on what I'm wearing and not the information I'm handing to you? But those are the things you just have to
In
understand.
the same situation. I started when I was in earlier days of my public speaking. I would always wear a toque. I just was
Yeah.
attached to my toque. So I had a call collection. And so I go and give a talk and I'm in my toque, but I'm still heels. I dress fashionably, I dress nicely. And then the organizer said that there were two women that came up to them and said, "We were shocked by this presentation. We were really surprised. Why were we surprised?" Well, when Marina first came out, we just did not think that she was going to be smart and there would be value. And the organizer said, "How come?" "Oh, it's because she was wearing a toque." So very similarly, right? And so then thankfully they were surprised and they found it to be valuable. But I realized that those judgments, yes, people will pass them on to accept it. And the first time I gave a presentation at Deloitte, I'm on their faculty of speakers now. And the first time I went to do a presentation, if I have to fit in, I have to fit in. I don't own a suit. I went and I bought a suit and black heels and just everything was very corporate looking. And then I said, "What am I doing?" And now when I go, if it's a sneaker day, then I'm in sneakers and they receive me just as well. The content is just as great. And I'm more comfortable because I'm not adjusting and I'm in something that I'm not used to. So, but it's hard because
It
criticism
it
first is
it
there.
is. And it also adds to impact as well. Coming into something people don't expect, that adds impact, that's impression. We are coming up to the end here. I just want to give you the last few minutes to plug where you are, who you are, where people can find you, any advice you have.
Sure. So, advice or stand out, speak up, be radically authentic. The worst form of censorship is self censorship. And the most important part of diversity is diversity of thought. And it might be scary to share yourself and be yourself and stand out, but it is a lot more beneficial and impactful than it might seem once we go through that initial concern and fear. We're one of the leaders globally in personal branding for Gen X CEOs and founders. We're headquartered in Montreal, Canada, so a fellow Canadian. And if people want to connect, brandofaleader.com. Or if you copy and paste my name into LinkedIn, I am the only Marina Byezhanova there. When I was younger, I loathed my impossible to pronounce last name. And now I love it because it allows me to be the only one and stand out.
Fair enough. And it sucks to be the one who has a name like Cody Johnston, which is pretty generic. Thank you very much. I'll make sure all of that's down in the comments below. And to everybody out there, please like, comment, subscribe, and message me if you need any more information or want to reach out to me.
Mhm. Thank you so much for having me.